Rock and roll was the revolution America was waiting for, a genre that unified people and brought the glory days that everyone born today wishes they could have been a part of. It was the most iconic era in music, and Bill Graham was working behind the scenes for all of it. He was the key act in starting the San Francisco psychedelic sound that so many musicians baited into. The Recording Academy even credits him for creating the modern rock concert. He was the rock promoter. He snagged artists who were reluctant to play at his venue in one conversation and outmaneuvered every other business in town to make sure his stage was the hot spot. If you want a juggernaut in the music biz, this guy was it. He was friendly with all the big names: Bob Dylan, Neil Young, The Doors, Bruce Springsteen, Led Zeppelin, The Grateful Dead, Chuck Berry, Stevie Nicks, Jimi Hendrix, Jefferson Airplane, The Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, George Harrison, Janis Joplin, Eric Clapton, and even discovered the band Santana. He's been awarded by the Recording Academy, earned an MTV Lifetime Achievement Award, but the exhibit that opened in his honor in July of 2017 isn't at a music establishment at all.
Inside the Illinois Holocaust Museum sits an exhibit that does not seem to be a likely fit. Bill Graham and the Rock and Roll Revolution is a newly opened exhibit at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. It features more than 400 items of iconic rock music memorabilia, including guitars owned by the Grateful Dead's Jerry Garcia and The Who's Pete Townsend, a friend of Bill's who wrote the foreword to his biography, Bill Graham, My Life Inside Rock and Out. The exhibit includes rare footage of concerts from the early years of rock and roll, vintage posters, a light show, never-before-seen interviews, and even an audio tour guided by Graham himself. So what the hell is all this doing in a Holocaust museum? There's an easy answer: Bill Graham. Born in Berlin, the capital city of Germany, in 1931, Bill Graham, born Wolfgang Gorganza, lived your average childhood, playing outside, helping his mother, and going to school. He was born to a lower middle-class family who moved to Germany before the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. Once Hitler rose to power, this bright image of a young, fruitful life faded to black. As anti-Semitism spread throughout Europe, Graham was sent with his younger sister off to a safe-house chateau guided by nuns in France. This was the smartest move made by his mother, for it saved his life. His family, excluding his father who had died when Bill was only 2 days old, were scattered across Europe. 3 of his 5 sisters managed to flee the country. His mother and sister Esther, however, were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. But as we all know, France fell to Germany in May of 1940. So what happened to Bill? Bill and his closest sibling, Tonya, were forced to walk the country of France, hoping to reach the Portugal checkpoint to escape to America. Of the 64 children who began the journey, only a handful were able to finish the trek. Bill's sister Tonya fell ill and passed away halfway through, leaving her dear brother all alone. But with tragedy came opportunity. Graham was among the group of orphans, the OTC, or 1,000 children. He was one of the 11 who were able to successfully get out of France and sail to North America. And just where did Bill land? The entertainment capital of America, New York, New York.
After a brief acting stint, standing in for Paul Burke in Naked City and landing roles as an extra for Mad Dog Call and Breakfast at Tiffany's, Bill was introduced to the mime troupe by Bonnie McLean, who he would later marry and divorce. He was on contract to promote their shows and find fun for the troupe. That was the start of it all. The troupe decided to hold a benefit in their loft. It didn't end till 6 or 7 a.m., and despite only the lowest of expectations, the line wrapped around the block. That night, 1,500 people were crammed into a 600-person space, and Bill's eyes were wide. He was hooked. He started hosting more events on his own, renting out the old Fillmore auditorium a man named Charles Sullivan ran. Bill left the group quickly when they refused to be a part of his events. They thought they would be more of a societal impact producing theater. As Bill left, he told them, "You can't do plays as though they're social weapons. They're not. What a social weapon would be to make a venue for a new culture, that would be a social weapon, and that would change society." And he did just that. Every night he became a chemist, stirring the lights, music, and so many people into the pot that the reaction couldn't be anything but incredible. The Fillmore quickly became the focal point of the psychedelic scene. Bill was a character, the only straight guy in the bunch of fuzzy hippies. He may have made the movement, but didn't understand its free-flowing nature. He wanted rules, constant order, which had its ups and downs. On one hand, it drew artists like Pete Townsend, who felt Bill's sense of clarity helped him feel secure while performing. On the other, he was such a stickler he'd usually go into a rage every night, screaming at any artist who showed up late or cursing out the employees if the details weren't done to a T. Bill was a no-bullshit man. one of the few people in the business who laid everything out on paper. A band may have headlined the night, but it was still his stage. Everyone had to pay to get in, no squeezing in extra friends, which may seem like common sense now, but back then it gave him a bad face. Capitalist pig, most called him. But in truth, Bill was just the ultimate businessman. Work was his life. Get up at 10, open and work the show till 2 a.m., then clean the 2,000 plus person venue, eat, crawl into bed at 5 a.m., then get up again at 10 and start the whole cycle over. It was his 100% effort or nothing. Everything he had was invested back into the business. He took care of his audience, hired 2 lawyers to represent anyone who got into legal trouble at the venue, drugs, violence, whatever. He was the first promoter to spend any money on a PA system, wanted a light show to complement the music he used dishwasher oil and water to get, and spent hours papering the city's streets overnight so when morning came, people were overwhelmed with the Fillmore name. As for his acts, he caught the big fish early, most of them like Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, and Santana before they blew into international fame. Actually, he literally caught Santana during the night of a big concert. The future guitarist Carlos Santana was trying to break into his second-story office to see the band perform. Carlos was 17 at the time, and lucky that Bill liked his character so much that he let him stay, getting so comfortable around the boy that he started introducing him to bands and eventually let him fill in for no-shows. One of Bill's biggest breaks was Otis Redding, who was the man of music at that time. In his early days, Bill didn't know a thing about rock and roll. He had always been a Latin man, but learned to take cues from the musicians. And the name that always came across was Otis Redding. You want Otis Redding. Otis had never played the San Francisco scene. In truth, he was really uncertain about it. It was crazy kids, crazy clothes, and crazy lighting. Something different was going on out there that the rest of the country hadn't caught up on. But Bill won him over quickly with his sincerity, and when Otis played his stage, he was stunned. Bill was a man with moves. When Otis came off the stage, he wanted a 7-Up, large 7-Up with ice, but the ice machine had broken during the night, so in a frenzy, Bill ran the entire block to the corner market. Before he stepped into Otis's dressing room, he exaggerated his breathing. He wanted to make sure Otis would know that he had just bolted down the block. As calculated, Otis picked up on Bill's winded state and asked why he couldn't seem to catch enough air. He explained the situation, and Otis was in such disbelief that he wrapped his arms around him and said, "When I play this town, from now on I will play for you." Bill's operation was in an ever-present expanding state. He booked so many gigs he started renting out the Winterland, another venue in town. Eventually, his act went across country. The Fillmore East came alive after buying out the old Village Theater and renovating it head to toe. It went from Village Theater to Fillmore East instantly. After its opening night, entertainment magazine Variety printed, "The New York rock scene had made a great leap upward with the opening of Fillmore East." But in 1968, the venues took a hit, especially the Fillmore West. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination had spooked the crowd. He was able to recover by moving to new venues and branching out into managing and organizing tours. In his later stages of career, focusing more on producing charity concerts like Live Aid in London and Philadelphia, and Amnesty International's Human Rights Now tour. Eventually, he closed the Fillmores, citing that it was a combination of the loss of intimacy in live arenas that he believed to have started with Woodstock and the marketing of stadium concerts, feeling forced to present artists who did not meet his standards simply for his sake of popularity, and that simply after many years of tireless work, he needed to rest. Bill died in a helicopter crash after a Huey Lewis concert in October of 1991. Since then, Live Nation had reopened the brand, bringing the Fillmore name to Detroit, Philadelphia, New York, Miami, Silver Spring, and Washington, D.C. Not many know of Graham's legacy, but with opening of these venues, the man who gave the rock scene a home and grew its roots will always be remembered.